Hey guys, gals, and Legionnaires, Rycon here, and welcome back to Rycon Reviews. Today we're looking at episode 3 of season 8 of The Walking Dead. This was Monsters, directed by Greg Nicotero. So the episode starts off in a pretty big fashion. We've got the kingdom continuing on from where they were before, and pretty much the whole way through this episode we have Ezekiel almost with the same mentality that Morgan had the previous episode of I don't die, but instead of that was we don't die. His mentality was that they weren't going to lose any people whatsoever, and for the most part they didn't. Their first strategy that they used was pretending to surrender and then having another group led by Carol take out all those saviors. And while that's a good strategy, that strategy will only work as long as all of the saviors die in that fight. Because if any of them survive, then there is no chance for anyone to surrender in the future, because once you kind of screw someone over once like that, you can't really do it again. So they did manage to mop up everyone this time, so I think it's okay in that regard, but it kind of does mean that, you know, if word of they ever got to the saviors, you know, they would never take any, they wouldn't take any kind of surrender whatsoever. And as we kind of learned from the start of this, they are trying to get the three main leaders. They're trying to get Rick, they're trying to get Maggie, and they are trying to get Ezekiel as well. And because Ezekiel was part of that group, I feel like that's maybe why they didn't just outright attack them and just try and just blitz them down. That's possibly why. I did like that they were using their whistling again. It just takes me back to that night where they just perfectly orchestrated that capture of Rick and his crew. And that whistling was just great, and it kind of took me back to that for a moment. But obviously it didn't go as well for the saviors this time. It went quite bad, in fact. And then we jump back to Rick and Morales, and I was really excited to see what they were going to do with Morales here, and it turns out that he did lose his family along the way, and Rick is trying to really push the idea that they are similar. You know, they've been through the same things. You know, he's lost people, Morales has lost people, and that, you know, maybe they can kind of come and see eye to eye here. And it seemed like Morales had just gone cold to all of this. I mean, even when he was talking about Glenn, obviously he didn't know Glenn and the others for as long, like he didn't know Laurie for as long. They were together for a while though. That little camp that they had outside of Atlanta, they'd been there for a while, so he knew them. You know, he knew them well enough, but Rick, he didn't really know all that well. But still, it did seem like it got to him for a second, and I think it was once he realized, you know, that the widow that they were chasing down was Glenn's wife, that maybe it started playing in his head for a little bit, and you could see him kind of deliberating it for a little while there. But honestly, I don't think we were going to see him make a 360. And we didn't really get a chance to see that anyway, because Daryl came in and just takes him out, no questions asked, even though Rick said no. Like, he told him, don't fire, don't shoot. Daryl was just like, nope. And he knew who he was. Like, I think Daryl was standing there long enough to realize that this was Morales and that he didn't care, because at the end of the day, he wasn't part of his family, and that was it. And he had a gun against Rick's head, and he wasn't going to take any chances. And I feel like, you know, ever since Daryl was captured, I think we have seen this massive change in him, where he will just take literally zero chances with anyone at all. And we do kind of see that later on in the episode. At the very end, we have Rick giving his word to this kid that, you know, he's going to let them go. And the guy was a kid. He didn't seem that old. And he gave information to them as Rick requested. And Rick said, you know, you're only as good as your word, and he used that, and sure enough, Rick was good for his word, but obviously Daryl didn't agree with that, and shot the guy down. And I think in that moment, you did see Rick kind of, he was shook up by this, because I think it's all coming back to what Morales was saying about how both him and Rick were monsters, and obviously episode title, you know, the word is going to come up a few times, and I feel like that's what they're talking about here, is that, you know, both Rick and Morales had done bad things to get to where they were. And, I mean, Morales was just going off what he had seen happen in the other room there. And, yeah, I mean, we don't know if that guy was Gracie's father or not, but I feel like if he was, I feel like Morales would have really played that card and be like, you killed that, you know, you killed that daughter's father, etc., etc. And I think because he didn't, I don't know whether or not that was her father. Who knows who the parents are, but someone painted that on the wall, so she belongs to someone. We just don't know who. Maybe that will come back later. I mean, Negan has a lot of wives, and it could be an interesting twist to know that maybe that this is a child of Negan. And while I would hate to say you're bartering with a child, it's something at the least that might be able to, halt some bloodshed maybe? Who knows? But I feel like that child does belong to someone, and perhaps it's someone important. Really, other than Negan, there really isn't anyone else that's too important that I imagine it could belong to, but I'm still going to be interested to see where that does end up. And the arc that we saw for the hilltop today was marching all of their prisoners back towards the hilltop. They were trying to take them back, and obviously Jesus had kind of taken command at this point. He'd really put his foot down, and they got them in something of a chain gang, taking them along the road. And the long-haired savior, who he doesn't even need a name. He was trying to push Morgan as much as possible. He was really trying to push Morgan's buttons, and Morgan was very easy to push in this scenario because he was already worked up, and we did really see that overflow when the prisoners tried to escape. And I can't really blame them in that scenario because they were trying to get away from walkers who were eating some of the people in the chain gang. So of course they would try and get away, but maybe they should have stopped running, but they kept on going, and that's the tough thing when you're a chain gang. You kind of don't have a choice, but the majority of them did seem to stay behind. They were aware that they're probably going to get shot if they leave, and Morgan did catch up with this group and killed one of them and was probably about to just unload on the rest of them, but Jesus arrived in time to stop that, and finally we kind of got a Jesus versus Morgan showdown. I'm a long-time comic book reader, and I'm a massive fan of Jesus, and in the comics Morgan is nothing like how he is in the show. And so when they started getting Morgan, I guess, to be more of this martial type character, I really thought that they were going to phase out Jesus, that they were never going to bring him in. But when you had these two characters that were quite adept at martial arts, it was great to see them finally go head to head. Albeit, it's not the best scenario, it's not the best time for that to be happening. I was surprised that the others were so far behind, but I guess Jesus is pretty quick on his feet. Yeah, I'm just surprised it took them so long to kind of catch up. And in the end, Jesus did win, but then Morgan kind of cheated him out of it and tried to stab him in the throat. And I'm surprised that no one that was running up tried to point a gun at Morgan. And yeah, I'm unsure as to why they didn't. But then at the same time, Jesus isn't the most popular person at the moment, but at the same time, they're still friends, so I don't know. I'm confused as to why no one really tried to defend him there, but maybe they thought, Morgan's close to the edge, let's not push him, let's just see if he comes down. And I have to admit, I'm surprised that while that fight was happening, that the others just didn't try to run away. I mean, if you were running originally, the guy was dead, so maybe they couldn't have, I don't know. Yeah, actually, now going back over that in my head, they probably couldn't run away because there is a dead man there attached to their rope, and they'd have to carry him, and that's going to make them much slower. In between this, we do get more montages of the kingdom literally just sweeping up all over. They're ambushing almost every single time, so it seems they know exactly where people are going to be, where the saviors are going to be, and just and probably using the same kind of strategy a number of times to kind of trick the saviors into thinking they're surrendering and then just hitting them super hard because they were doing work. While this is all going down, both Rick and Daryl are pinned down inside their building. Aaron has left Eric and returned to the fight to try and fight their way back inside because they've seen that all of the saviors have started rushing inside for some reason, so I think they're kind of cottoning on that Rick and Daryl might be in danger. But after a few tense moments after running out of ammunition, Rick and Daryl took care of the rest of the saviors up there by throwing them down an elevator shaft, because that's what you do when you don't have any bullets. And while the rest of the Alexandrians are cleaning up, we head back to the hilltop and we can see that Gregory has arrived back there, and he's arrived back there with Gabriel's car and no Gabriel. Obviously Maggie is suspicious of this, and after a bit of back and forth, she does agree to let Gregory back inside, but obviously Gregory is in no position to be making any kind of commands, and I'm pretty sure he's aware of that as well. I think he was just grateful to be let back inside. He was begging for a really long time, but they finally did let him back in, and not long afterwards we do have Jesus and the rest of the hilltop rocking up with all of their prisoners, and obviously Maggie is unsure about this, but Jesus does his best to convince her that they are going to need to do something here. They can't just execute these people because they surrendered. It puts them in a really difficult position, and they have some trailers around the back. They're going to try and hold them in there, but it does mean that they have to sacrifice soldiers that they would have watching their perimeter. They have to be watching these prisoners now. Not only that, but they're in the middle of a war, and I feel like sometimes something that's forgotten in The Walking Dead all the time is food is needed. Now, the Hilltop is one of the main producers of food in this region, but even so, you've got another 30, it's got to be almost 30, 40 people that you've arrived that you got to be feeding, as well as these soldiers who are out in the field. And during war, that's going to be really difficult to do. So I feel like, obviously, the conditions for these prisoners aren't going to be great, and it's going to put the Hilltop at a massive disadvantage as well, because as far as we've seen so far, the Saviors aren't taking any prisoners. They're really only interested in the big three. So I'll be interested to see if that's played out at all, if they talk about it at all. Generally, they don't seem to too much, but I feel like this would be a strain on resources, and perhaps it will be something that pushes the decision to do something. But yeah, that's the thing, is like, what do you do in this situation? Exile ain't gonna work, because they're just gonna go straight back to the Saviors, and execution at the same time. It's bleak. And today's episode does end with our first real casualty. And I say real casualty because I think we had Francine last episode, but we never really saw, and I kind of feel like it's a little bit of a disservice. I mean, she isn't a major character, but still, we didn't really see her die on screen. We saw her get shot, and she seemed to be going for a little bit longer. I think it would have been nice, the bodies that were laid out, if we did see her there, and I'm pretty sure that we didn't. I didn't get a chance to go back and look at it, but I'm pretty sure that we didn't see her, because I was looking out for her, and I didn't see her there. So whether or not she's still alive and kicking, I'm not sure. But the first casualty that we've actually seen on screen was Eric, and we can tell how much it's hit Aaron super hard. And now I can kind of talk about it. The fight that happened is in the comics, and I was thinking maybe they were going to go a different direction with it, and I kind of like it when they do this, because they throw a curveball in there for us who have read it. It seemed like Eric was going to pull through, that he was going to make it, but going back there, and as soon as I saw how much blood was on that tree, I knew he had to be somewhere nearby, and he wasn't going to be alive still. And I feel like this is going to be something that eats away at Aaron for a while, because he's going to know that Eric is still walking out there somewhere, that he's not resting in the ground. And I feel for anyone, that's got to be something that really does mess with you on a whole different level. I mean, there is grieving and there is coming to terms with losing someone, but knowing that someone is still out there decaying and eating people, and it's not a nice thing to think about. And yeah, it's tough. I felt like maybe they should have tried to have some kind of finish there, some kind of finale, but at the same time, they knew that they needed to get out of there. There was a horde coming, and well, that was that. And while Aaron is making his way back, Rick is continuing to take pictures of the battle. He does seem to be documenting this. He is creating a history of this for some reason or another. We haven't really found out what the purpose to these are. I feel like they are there as some kind of war propaganda, at least to be able to show people that we have defeated the Saviors, we've done this, because their communication hasn't been great so far. We haven't seen much communication between the groups, so I don't even know if they've been successful or not. They have radios, but those radios have limited range, so I really don't know if they know what kind of condition everyone is in. But Rick does hand off Gracie to Aaron, and Aaron's going to be taking her back to the Hilltop. There are a lot of theories out there with Gracie. A lot of people thinking that the flash forward that Rick was having, it's not Judith in the future, it's actually Gracie, this baby here. I don't know. I honestly don't think those things that we were seeing were like 100% flash forwards. We'll see what happens with that. This was another Greg Nicotero episode. I don't know. I honestly don't want to commit to something 100% yet. And to wrap things up, we have the Kingdom once again victorious in battle, or so they think, until someone opens up on them with a machine gun, absolutely decimating the forces of the Kingdom. And this is that thing we were talking about earlier. It's the cockiness, it's being too sure of yourself. It is the Morgan attitude that you're going to just walk around and be bulletproof. And Ezekiel was definitely in that stage where he thought, we're so good at what we do, there is no way we can, there's no way we can have anything that goes wrong. And it's good to an extent because it's creating morale, they're on a roll, but at the same time, you don't want people to think they're invincible. You do need to have an element of fear there still, and this is really going to knock that fear in, and probably in such a way that the Kingdom's forces are going to be pretty broken after this, because they have in their mind that, they're invincible for one reason or another. And I think we'll find out in the next episode the true extent of, well, this battle. But that wraps us up for this episode. I thought it was a good episode. I really enjoyed it. Again, it's more of this fight, and it's just the single day. And we've spent the first 3 episodes on this one day of combat right now. We started in the morning, and it looks like now we're kind of getting on towards the evening. It's a little bit later in the day, so we'll see once night finally hits what's going to be happening, but we still don't know what's going on with Gabriel. He's still at the sanctuary. We don't know how bad things are at the sanctuary. They were pinned down by a decent number of dead. They drew a pretty decent horde there, so it's going to take them a long time before they can retaliate, but I feel like in the next episode or the episode afterwards, we are going to see the retaliation of the Saviors, because they've been getting knocked back again and again and again, and we've seen too many victories for the survivors, and I think now we're really going to see the Saviors coming up with what they got left and trying to hit them as hard as they can. So I'm predicting we're going to see that happen in the next episode. I'm not 100%, but I feel like we're going to see something happen soon, because the Saviors can only take so much before, well, they either break altogether or, well, they make a comeback. And that was Monsters. I hope you enjoyed the review. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Let me know what you thought of it in the comments below. Let's discuss and see if you've got any theories. If there's spoilers in them that kind of contain anything with the comics, please do actually mark them as spoilers and have a decent number of spaces in between, just so that nothing gets ruined. But if you're just a show watcher, please do just get those theories out there, because I do really enjoy reading them and just seeing what people think is going to go down next. But that's going to wrap us up for this review. Thank you all for listening. I've been Rycon. You have all been awesome, and until next time, stay tuned.